YOLO, infidels, that's right. It's the one you've been waiting for. A giant show, one of the biggest HAMIN'S hardcore happy hours that ever will be. And today, we have on our own special giant back with the Conspiracy Horsemen, my man from ECW FBI, Big Sal, and also BWO legend, Stevie Richards. And there's no right to censor today, infidel, because nobody censors HAMIN when it comes to telling the truth. So today, we're talking to a very special guest later on, Tim Albariño, the director of Holocaust of the Giants. So sit back before you get stomped into oblivion, infidels. YOLO. Yo, guys, welcome back. I know we're all really excited about this show. And, Greek God Papadon couldn't be here. And I've had some funny comments of people really liking his stuff from the car and haunting houses wherever he is. But, just to start off on a semi-serious note, he actually had to go to a wake today for another good friend of ours, my best man for my wedding when I eloped, Mike Mondo. So I want to send, Mike's not passed away, his mother passed, but I'm sending all my love and thoughts out to Long Island to Mikey, and by all means, I wish I could be there with him today. So I know it's a tough time he's going through. So if you want to send him a message, please do, of condolences, because I know he needs it right now. But, to welcome back and bring things up, we miss him today, GGP, and I know he wanted to be here because he saw this documentary. But Big Sal, how you doing? Welcome back, man, our own giant.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And let me tell you something. I got nothing on these dudes. These dudes are 7, 8, 9 feet, 12 feet. I got nothing, man.
You're big enough to take all of us out with one dive off the apron, so that's all that matters. And Big Stevie Cool with the Cyclops kitty over there. How's it going, man?
Yeah, I mean, the Cyclops are a big part of this documentary as well. A lot of mythology, what we thought or think is mythology, turns out it might be rooted in some kind of realism. And I
don't know if you guys knew. I'm sorry. The Greeks invented mythology.
Oh, God. What are you getting text from Papadon?
I just want to represent since he's not here.
That's right. We had to get it over, get all the Greek gods in real quick. Shout out all the Greek gods out there.
I am really happy to see. We miss Sal. I'm really happy you're back, man.
Me too, man. Thank you. Just hearing your voice always makes me laugh, brightens my day, dude. And I know I can pretty much say anything when you're around because no one will mess with me. So easy enough there.
Now I can't get the picture out of my mind of him just hugging Bubba from behind and just telling him, just take it easy, let it go. It's going to be okay, or whatever soft words you whispered into his ears.
I was singing Soft Kitty in his ear.
And that's the thing. Are all giants gentle? It doesn't seem like some of these are. And this is where I'm almost going to have to eat a little crow today, is how I mean, well, this guy might get hardcore on me, or you guys can, because it's well known that I'm a Hitchens level atheist. But all these stories are coming out of the Bible that they're quoting, and I'll be damned if I'm not looking at it a little bit different and having to take a spoonful of salt with how I want to do things. So I'm interested to learn and listen today. And man, I learned a lot from this documentary. But yeah. One thing I want to cover before we get into Giants, we'll take a step back, because our most popular episode so far, and Sal wasn't here for it, but I popped huge because his reaction was so big to it, was the Mandela Effect episode. It's done almost double, I think, because of the hashtags on Twitter, just Mandela Effect, and people watching and wanting to hear it, and gotten some great feedback and driving people nuts. But Sal, you were legit shouting at your computer after.
I was angry. I also have to say, that lunch, I took a lunch hour. I drove around a Walmart parking lot, and I looked at cars.
Yeah.
And literally after literally 45 minutes of looking, and even the old beat up pieces of shit, I'm like, no, man, there's the curly F. What the fuck is this? 45 minutes went by, and I just spent 45 minutes looking at cars in a parking lot. And I was like, is that just awful, or am I just trying to find out if it's real? Am I trying to prove to myself that it's real, and not just, that whole, because as you were telling me, I'm going, no, let me look at this. No. And when I watched the video with the stupid Sex in the City and the sex on the city in the city, whatever the fuck it is, I'm like, that's just branding from this perfume. It has nothing to do with the whole thing. And it was all of it. Just, you blew my mind, and you made me go look around and like a nutcase. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, man. I mean, then that the Ford symbol of how it changed. I remember because my dad was a Ford guy our whole life. So just to have the regular dash. Now, if they were rebranding or something, that's one thing.
Right.
But if it was like mid 2000 models till now, but I know I went and looked up some 80s Broncos because that's what we had, and they're all changed, man. And
I'm telling you, I'm with you on it because the Volvo thing. I'm like, I never saw that arrow before. I never saw the arrow. I never saw that arrow.
So and I know the wife was heating on you too because you were getting hot about it.
She just kept looking at me like, seriously, and I'm like, no, look. So I'm showing her, and then I showed her the Sex and the City thing, and she throws out the thing. Well, maybe it's just the perfume. Maybe they didn't want anything to do with the perfume, so they had to change the name. So I'm like, that's what I said. That's what I said. That's what I said. And then we started looking at more stuff, and she's going, no. I'm like, yes. Look at it. And I'm yelling and screaming in the middle of the house. Yeah.
I mean, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. That one's
my God.
Face, right? But we got to give a shout out to Stevie here because we watched this documentary, and we'll talk to director Tim about it later from Gen6 Productions. Stevie hit me up and went right by me. In this documentary, they say the Smithsonian Institution, and
they say it a lot, and you notice it. After he told me, that's all I heard.
So, I mean, I did a quick search at work too, and the only place you can find Smithsonian Institute, which is what I grew up with, absolutely not institution, is on Reddit in a Mandela Effect forum. So as of August 2016, it was kind of called out. So we're kind of coming up on the 1-year anniversary of whenever that was Mandela affected or found out for the first time. So good catch there, Stevie.
Yeah, we want to remind everybody that if you want, listen to the Mandela Effect episode, but these huge campaigns, and the analogy we used, Sal, was the WWF to WWE. It costs millions of dollars. It takes weeks, and usually it is a promotional thing when a brand is switched over to something. So if you switch the Smithsonian Institute to the institution, I would assume there would be a big social media blitz. There would be all this stuff out there on Twitter about like Oscar Mayer, and all these things would say we changed, like the new Coke. They would make it into something publicly. So to have these slight changes, people might not think it's a big deal, but it's really telling that the companies would spend millions of dollars to do this, but not try to make their money back with a marketing campaign.
Yeah, there'd be an awareness campaign, no doubt about it, if they were switching big like that.
Yeah.
Or even, hey, buy our old T-shirt with the old logo on it or something to that effect.
Yeah. But now even it's all about the lookup, and even fans of the show who are really pumped for this episode were hitting me up like, I heard the Marilyn Manson version, and he definitely says these. Okay. Right. Now go and Google Sweet Dreams Are Made of These.
By Marilyn Manson.
It's going to come up Sweet Dreams Are Made of This in every lyric sheet. So,
and like we talked, it doesn't even rhyme that way. It doesn't make any sense.
So it's all in the lookup and to get the hookup, and it's a strange thing going on, man.
But I like that saying. What did you say? Look up to get the hookup? I like that.
You got to do your own legwork, and it's again, you're gonna run face first into a brick wall and be like, no, just when I thought I had it solved, and that's it. You're not gonna have it solved. You're just gonna find another rip. Yeah. What was that? Sorry.
Just more questions, man.
Yeah, just more questions.
And that's when you guys told me, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Come on. Now, and the thing is, I know you, man. I know we've had talks and everything. So it's not like I'm like, I know you weren't fucking with me, but now I'm looking and I'm going, come on, this is so obvious. It can't be like Oscar Mayer. This is actually what drove me to insanity. The song, everybody knows this stupid song, right?
My baloney has a first name. Yeah.
Right. OSCAR and then MAYER. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. Exactly. And then when people tell me, no, it's E. And I'm like, bullshit. Nobody ever said E. Well, it's just the way the kid I go look up the stupid song on the thing.
Yep.
And they say E. And I'm like, son of a bitch.
And for, we said to get the wives into it, mirror, mirror on the wall.
Oh, man. My wife, that was the first one. My wife, she yelled at me in bed, not in the good way either. She yelled at me. She was like, you don't don't go, said something basically like, don't go down the rabbit hole and don't go crazy and don't be getting us killed and all this stuff. And I was like, well, I got one more for you. And I go, blank, blank on the wall. And she said, mirror, mirror. And I said, no, now it's magic mirror. She got the phone out. She looked up to get the hook up, as you would say. And she was, after that, she couldn't, like you, Sal, she couldn't not pay attention to everything from that point on.
Right. And there's a list of 100 of them, man. And it just takes that one that really strikes the nerve from somebody's childhood. And I don't know if it was you, Stevie, or GGP sent a picture from a book that was non-Disney published, but it was like an old school, maybe 60s. And it said mirror, mirror in the text still. And then yesterday I put out a video. I don't know if you guys got to look at it, but it was when Roddy Piper took over some talk show early 80s during the rock and wrestling era. It's like a 48-minute piece on, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's on it, New Editions on it, and like a Hogan thing. But at 11 minutes, there's a Berenstain Bears clip, and the announcer says Bears. So I don't know if that was the announced thing. I didn't get to see any branding, but it was changed to stain in that. So, just these things now that we're hyper aware of, every time we see a known Mandela effect, man, it just sticks with me for the next day so hard. I'm just like, damn.
What I laugh about, when my wife would turn around and say, she'd go, no, you're an idiot. And she'd leave the room. Right. And then I'd hear silence. And in the other room, I hear, no, because she was looking it up on the phone. And I'm like, it is. That's exactly what I did. As you guys sat here and you were sending me all the stuff, I'm going, no, obviously somebody did this. Look, you could tell it's photoshopped. And then I'm looking up and going, son of a bitch. What the? And I'm sitting there yelling and screaming. And then, like I said, on my lunch hour, I went out and I'm driving around a Walmart parking lot and I'm looking at different cars. And and then after the 45 minutes, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what have I been doing the whole time? I'm like, and that's what I said too. I was like, am I awake now? Am I going to get everything? Am I going to pick up all of it now? Yeah. So I guess I was waiting for the Smiths to show up.
Yeah. Right. Anderson, how are you? And then there was another, to recap, we did a show on aliens. Secure Team 10 put a video out where I guess a very well-known, what I'm looking for now, I don't know if it got pulled down or not, on 60 Minutes, a guy was going on to stooge that aliens are here and have been here, a top scientist, and he just kind of like, F it, like, I don't care anymore, like, it doesn't matter. So I don't know if you guys got to see that one I sent earlier in the message thread either, but now that I'm looking at Secure Team, maybe it's just not, it's got a different thumbnail or something. He changed. Oh, Space Exec admits aliens here in bombshell interview. It was posted 16 hours ago on Secure Team 10. So, I feel like everything with wrestlers, we're always looking and we're a little bit ahead of the curve, man. But we're putting these conversations out there and they're just coming to light so quickly.
I'm sure we're going to ask the guy when we get him on, but I was looking at different conspiracy theories. The part where they said that the giants came out of a portal, a Stargate, essentially through the ground, and I was thinking, oh my God, like there's some crazy conspiracy theories out there about Hollow Earth stuff and all this other stuff that's just like, it might be misdefined or it might be misunderstood, but it seems like all these things do, like the big board, you put the string with the pins to make it look insane, but it really does kind of all tie together. And once again, hopefully I'll ask him when he comes on if this is if these beings are terrestrial, extraterrestrial, interdimensional. I mean, there's so many different ways, or all three. I mean, it's really pretty confusing where their origin might even be, because these could be the original engineers that are in Alien Covenant too, because we're supposedly especially Sal, descendants of these beings. I mean, there's all these different theories it opened up a whole new world watching this documentary. I never even knew Moses in the Bible had spoke about giants. That's crazy.
Right. No, and at the same time that it was going on, that they were supposedly migrating to the Americas and whatnot. And I thought a lot of the mounds and things like that how many are undiscovered out there in the woods still? I mean, whether it's Smithsonian kayfabing us on for how many years to push their agenda, which it outlines in this, but there's no way they could have found anything. And this island of Sardinia, this is like the first year I've even heard about this, like being, possibly Atlantis and where it all spun out of, and that there's probably thousands and thousands of giants still buried there. So incredible to me.
See, and when I'm watching this now, I'm a big fan of Norse culture and all that, and I've mentioned a couple times joking around, especially talking about the Odin, your cat, and when he's saying the red-haired giants with copper armor, and I'm just automatic, my brain went to frost giants, and I'm like,
oh wow.
And then because Vikings, they found Vikings here, they found the ship, like inland. So to me, it's like, why not? To me, that sure. And then, but they just went straight to Sardinia, and I'm like, okay, well, that's another angle. But to me, when you say that, these red-haired like warriors in copper armor who were just vicious, I automatically think of the Jotun, from Norse mythology.
That's nuts. And I know you are way into that. And I was also wondering, because you're a big Dungeons and Dragons guy, for any of our listeners out there, you probably have heard a lot of these names before as far as characters and mythologies, because, that game is so in tune with old lore.
The whole monster manual is based on myths and religion, and, Gary Gygax took it, all the stories, all the myths, and he, made his monsters.
And now it's more legit than ever.
Yeah, right.
It's not a fake thing anymore. So, I definitely don't want to jump too far ahead before he comes on here, but the redhead thing is kind of strange to me. That seems to be a reoccurring theme with these things. We often use that as a rib, like and beat you like a redheaded stepchild or whatever. You know what I mean? The redheads are teased as children to some degree. Now being a redhead could be the most badass thing ever. It seems like a lot of the giants, that's a telltale feature, along with some have extra row of teeth. Some have an extra digit on their hand and on their foot as well. So,
what's that called on the cats?
The dew claw.
Dew claw. Or when they have the extra toe.
Oh, peritactyl, or I think
that's peridactyl.
Yeah. Peridactyl.
Wasn't coming to mind.
And I don't know if you guys saw the way I got on to Steve Quayle, who's kind of the more known from Gen 6. I guess he's the front man, where I guess it could be Tim Albariño now, who's coming on as he's the director of this project, and probably the main co-host, or the main host of it, I would say, in this documentary. I first got onto him with a story in Afghanistan. I don't know if you guys know this one, where supposedly, whether it was a SEAL team or it was a Green Beret team, they're out in the mountains looking for possibly this, and they're attacked by a giant with red hair, and he lays waste to them. And they get transmission out, and they all die. And then they send out another team, and they engage with them, and they find the bodies of the dead soldiers spread around, some, I guess, eaten from what, if you believe the Facebook video or what have you. But then, they unload on him after he spears one of the dudes through the chest with a giant spear, and they take him out. And then in come, the helicopters, the Chinooks, to take him back to base. And a lot of soldiers saw him, and then they were breaking kayfabe about it. They didn't want their face shown on camera, but they were doing a lot of over the back shots of this. And this plays into the narrative of, in this documentary, he talks about, the giants coming back and being reanimated. Now, everything that we're doing with, biotech, could this be the time that they've got a real tissue sample they can use and are making a whole platoon of big sales over there?
Well, didn't they say there's a black market where people are paying millions for the DNA of these giants?
I think maybe not just the DNA, but like, if you're
skulls
and you want a skull or you want a huge hand or whatever for your freak cabinet.
Oh, now here's want one of those.
Yeah, here's an interesting kind of crazy man theory here. The Bin Laden raid, and then mysteriously on that SEAL Team 6 on a separate mission or somewhere around there ended up with their helicopter crash. I'm just saying now that it's kind of all like that Afghanistan angle with a giant, and they kind of hushed up the fact that the SEAL Team 6 had all perished. Right, all of them died out there on a mission in Afghanistan. Not too long after that.
And it was the whole protocol of how they fly and how they put those guys on two different choppers is different, in the wrong kind of chopper that they never fly on. They were on Chinooks, and they usually fly Blackhawks as well, because they're far more armed. But a lot of people also believe that the big Moab, mother of all bombs, that supposedly killed 36 ISIS members, was in a similar spot where they had a showdown with that giant. So that could be a cover story where they're just bombing the shit out of giants. So interesting here. It's 6:29, so I'm going to bring him on right now and try and add Tim Albariño to the call here.
Very cool. I don't have any kind of music for I don't want dead air while you're dialing.
Sal, sing us a little something.
Want everybody to just tune out.
I was just looking at the wedding picture we had with me on your shoulders like Guido at Doring's wedding.
Hello, Tim. You there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, welcome, man, to HAMIN'S Hardcore Happy Hour, and thanks for giving us time, man. You're on right now with ECW legend Stevie Richards and ECW legend Big Sal Graziano from the FBI, and I'm Ben Hamin, a.k.a. Ben Doer, but, man, we are blown away by this work that you're doing, and we're super pumped to have you on, man.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on with you, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I guess Steve Quayle is kind of the front man, but I'm glad, that you reached out off of his recommendation and gave us a chance to look at your stuff here. And if you want to see this documentary series, especially Holocaust of the Giants, it's from Gen6 Productions. And I think you guys started this because you were kind of tired. We covered a little bit before you came on of kind of these shows that tease you but lead you to nowhere, where you guys are doing real in the field work, and you wanted something that was going to be credible. Am I right in that?
Yes. Yeah, we do. We go out and do investigative research, just like any investigative researcher. We follow leads, and our interest is not to prove one point or another, but to get to the actual truth of the matter. I mean, we're obviously convinced that in the existence of giants, that giants existed, that giants walk the earth, and in fact still do. And so most of the evidence pertaining to giants has been buried, has been sequestered in the vaults of the Smithsonian, in the vaults of the Vatican. But, we go to a place like the island of Sardinia, where not many people have gone looking for evidence of giants, and we were absolutely shocked at the amount of testimonies that we were receiving from people, and and what we consider to be hard evidence of the existence of giants.
I agree. I could watch old Sardinians bury the church left and right, and say how they had experience just from plowing, and they're just literally huge bones coming out of the ground left and right. And then, right afterwards, some authority figure comes in and either sweeps them away or tells them they need to smash them up and kind of hide themselves, because they probably got tired of doing it themselves. Too much work smashing giant bones, I guess.
Yeah, we actually have two individuals in our latest film, Holocaust of Giants, Sardinians, that worked on the same dig at different times. That was the church that was beneath the church of Santa Anastasia.
Yes.
And these two guys, one of them worked in the earlier years of the excavation, the other one worked in the latter years of the excavation. Both of these guys were hired by the government, by the Italian government, from individuals from the capital city of Cagliari on the island of Sardinia, to dig up the bones of giants. And they found all kinds of artifacts. By the way, there's a lot of treasure associated with the bones of giants, with the remains of ancient giants. There's all kinds of fascinating artifacts that are extracted along with the bones. And these guys dug up the bones of the giants from under the church, in the region surrounding the church, right in the vicinity of the church. The property of the church the church was built on top of a nuraghe, a megalithic tower, an ancient megalithic tower that was in ruins. And associated with these megalithic towers in Sardinia are what are called to this day the tombs of the giants. And the oldest legends of Sardinia tell that giants, the Rephaim as the Bible calls them, were buried in the soils of Sardinia, and especially in the tombs of the giants. So it's absolutely fascinating information. It was It was a fascinating investigation, and to be honest with you, it's still ongoing. That particular investigation in Sardinia.
Well, before I
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to make a real quick point. This is Stevie. I think it's amazing that in the documentary, by the way, the presentation and the production quality is stellar. So it was amazing to watch. The thing that you noted in the documentary that I found fascinating was the fact that the placement of the churches in relation to where the giants are buried and where these mounds are, almost every time, if not every time, I think you said that there's a church right there in the vicinity of where these suspected burial grounds are.
In many cases, you will find a convent, a chapel, a cathedral, Catholic cathedral, specifically Roman Catholic in most cases. And this is we don't have a bias towards against the Roman Catholic Church. We don't have a bone to pick with the Roman Catholic Church. This is just the facts. We found all over the earth that it seems that the MO of the Roman Catholic Church, at least in the old days, was to occupy these strategic archaeological sites, especially pertaining to the world before the great cataclysm, before the great flood that covered the earth. And many times these megalithic sites, for example, in the city of Cusco, which is a city located in Peru. It was the capital of the Incan Empire. There are many megalithic ruins in that city, in and around Cusco, and some of the most important sacred sites of the Inca were captured by the Spaniards, and immediately, or within a very short period of time, Catholic churches were erected on top of these very important archaeological sites. Which, in the case of the Inca, many of these temples were covered wall to wall with pure gold. And of course, that's what the conquistadors were looking for, was gold. And the Inca were able to hide much of that gold because, in many cases, the megaliths were built on top of vast underground tunnel systems. Not just tunnel systems, but veritable cities underground, and in some cases artificial tunnels and artificial caverns, making use of naturally occurring caverns, naturally occurring tunnels beneath the soils of the earth, sometimes very, very deep, buried very, very deeply into the earth. And these tunnels were trafficked by some ancient people who built them and made use of them. And the Inca, of course, made use of them. They did not build them themselves, but they certainly made use of them. And so by taking possession of these sacred sites, taking possession of these megalithic archaeological sites, the Catholic Church sometimes inadvertently also occupied the strategic doorways that led down into the underground world, in which I believe some very intense non-human entities still lurk.
Now, we were talking earlier. Do you believe, what your view is? You kind of covered of, are there Stargates they come through, which is kind of the native, way of connecting with them on a telepathic level, and you also put over even in a state of stasis where they may be underground still, their brain waves are very strong. Or Stevie had brought up earlier on the show, do you believe that this is some type of extraterrestrial origin that brought these to the earth, which is the biblical way?
There's a complex answer to that question. First of all, I believe that in order to rightly understand the megaliths, to have the proper context for these kinds of questions, we have to understand that in the distant past, thousands and thousands of years ago, there was a highly advanced civilization on planet Earth. These guys were building, they were using methods of construction, of masonry that are still beyond what we can do in many cases today with modern machinery, with the advanced equipment that we have today. These guys were lifting, for example, the stone of the pregnant woman in Baalbek, which weighs in thousands and thousands of pounds, multiple tons. We can't lift that thing out of the dirt today. And the Romans went and built on top of those ruins that are at Baalbek. As is the case all over the earth, conventional archaeologists, conventional historians will now credit the latecomers with the building of very ancient megaliths. For example, I just mentioned Peru. In Peru, the megaliths in Sacsayhuaman, for example, in the city of Cusco, are credited to the Inca. But the Inca didn't even have the wheel, and they had copper chisels. There's no way that the Inca could have constructed the walls of Sacsayhuaman. It simply defies logic. The same applies for Baalbek. Today, if you read the history books, Baalbek, which is in Lebanon, the building of Baalbek is attributed to the Romans. But the Romans had no devices that could have lifted those massive stones. None. They were incapable of moving the foundation stones of Baalbek. What they did, and what the Inca did, was they built with their own ingenuity, which was advanced for that time. Both the Romans and the Incans built on top of the foundations that were thousands of years older than the Romans, older than the Incan Empire. And these were the foundations that were laid in the world before the flood of Noah, in the world before the great cataclysm. There was an empire, I believe it was a universal empire, that once existed on the earth that was absolutely decimated. And again, these guys were building using advanced technology. You mentioned Stargates. We do believe that a Stargate is real technology. It's what military informants have told us. They refer to Stargates, they refer to giants, aliens, they refer to these things as core reality. That's what they call it. That's what they designate these things, at least to us. They tell us this is core reality. It's absolutely classified, top secret stuff. It is real. It does exist. Much of this technology originates in the past. This isn't futuristic Star Trek stuff. You have to look to the past for a lot of this, what we would consider high technology, that was decimated, disappeared off the face of the earth. I mean, think about the megaliths, and I'm assuming your audience is pretty familiar with megalith. Megalith simply means constructions that were devised with very large, incredibly large stones, in the Cyclopean style, without the use of mortar. Now consider this. These megaliths were not just impressive because they used extremely large stones. These megaliths were impressive because they could withstand cataclysm. They could withstand earthquakes, massive earthquakes, and have withstood earthquakes all over the earth. Again, referencing Cusco. In Cusco, the walls of Sacsayhuaman have stood for thousands of years and have withstood multiple earthquakes, even in modern times. Massive earthquakes would rock the city of Cusco, and everything that the Spanish erected and the Inca before them came crumbling down. But the ancient walls, the ancient edifices that were raised in the prehistoric past stand fast to this day. So the question is this: that kind of technology that is so useful to the human race, how in the world did we forget how to build with megalithic blocks, to build to that scale and with that kind of technology that can withstand earthquakes? How does that kind of technology, so useful to us, get lost? It's just there's only one answer, and that is a global cataclysm.
Yeah, very, definitely a highly probable, compared to all the stories that have told as we were children, that when it came to the Great Flood, it just wiped everyone out. But Big Sal, our resident giant, I want to turn it over to you, man. What questions do you have about your own?
Okay, first of all, I have so many questions and so many comments for Tim. First of all, it was amazing. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Your work was really, really great. One of the questions I was always wondering, their weapons, their armor, those things would be considered artifacts as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, I'm assuming they're amongst the things that just up and disappear.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So to me, I'm having a hard time trying to understand why the church would want to bury it, because that would pretty much lend credence to their stories in the Bible, wouldn't it?
It's more complicated than just lending credence to a biblical narrative. First of all, don't make the mistake in believing that the Roman Catholic Church, or even the Orthodox Church for that matter, is really that interested in supporting the biblical narrative. For example, the Jesuit order. the Jesuits are Darwinian. They believe in the theory of evolution. In fact, if you dig deep into the Jesuit order, you're going to find out that many of the Jesuits follow the teachings of Teilhard Chardin, which are basically an ancient alien type theory, panspermia, that we were seeded, the human race was seeded by a more advanced culture. This is along the lines of the Zecharia Sitchin type information that came out relating to the Sumerian seals and the Sumerian tablets. So it's not necessarily so cut and dry. But as I mentioned earlier, associated with the bones and the artifacts of the giants is an incalculable. Many of the giants that were unearthed in Sardinia, according to many of the witnesses, by the way, that we spoke to, we didn't even put on camera. But we were told time and time again that when they would unearth the bones of giants, they would also discover in many cases vast quantities of gold and silver. And the gold and silver, along with the bones of the giants, would disappear into an underground market, a black market where these kind of arcane artifacts are trafficked. And they're trafficked for, first and foremost, because of their incredible value. But also, they're trafficked for darker, more nefarious reasons, for cultic purposes. They're used in occultic rites. And if you watch our film, The Holocaust of Giants, there is a faction, an occult faction on the earth that is very interested in resurrecting the Rephaim, in resurrecting the empire of the gods that once existed on the earth. And so it's a very complex situation. So we cover the Smithsonian cover-up in the United States, what's been called Smithsonian Gate in the United States, that in the late 19th century, early 20th century of the United States, people were discovering the bones of giants all over the United States, especially in the mounds. There were once tens of thousands of what they called Indian burial mounds all over the United States, especially the East Coast, primarily actually on the East Coast. And in many of these mounds were the remains of very strange entities. And I say entities because some of these entities, some of these beings had horns, had double rows of teeth, 6 fingers and 6 toes, had pointed teeth. So we're dealing with a non-human hybrid species. We're not just dealing with Andre the Giant or some NBA basketball player. We're dealing with guys that in some cases are 15 feet plus. And these were documented all over the United States. Even the Smithsonian has in their own archives to this day documented finds of skulls that were so large that a normal-sized man could wear it like a helmet. So you're talking at least 8 or 9 feet tall. And so these are very monstrous, in the literal sense of the word, monstrous entities that were living in the past that also have a supernatural origin. They're not just big and strong and feral and fierce. They have a supernatural origin. So there is a desire to sequence the DNA of these entities in order to unlock the prowess contained in their origin, leading back to what are referred to as the Watchers, the fallen angels from the world before the great cataclysm, before the flood.
Now, you were saying earlier, I'm sorry, that there was some intense beings that were there now. Are you something like this or something different?
Yes. Yeah. We get reports all the time. In fact, in our last film, the episode 2, The Unholy Sea, we begin the film with an account from. He's an active duty AC-130 pilot, but he's still flying with the military. This individual flew into Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. He was called in to pick up some high-value cargo. That's what he did. He picked up cargo. Sometimes he would go in and pick up Taliban, some of the Taliban leaders, and classified type missions. And he was called in one day. He flew in for a routine pickup. They didn't tell him what it was. Long story short, when he arrived, he was informed. He was met by what he calls the babysitters. He told me that these guys were military intelligence, high-ranking military intelligence guys. They were they were accompanying this high-value cargo that he had to pick up. And when he got there, it was the body of a giant. And this thing was 10 to 12 feet tall. He knows exactly how much it weighed because the guy that does the weighing, the lift master, actually he has to weigh everything that goes on the AC-130. So they weighed this thing, and it was 1,000 pounds. I mean, 1,000-pound guy, 10 to 12 feet tall. He had 6 fingers, 6 toes. He was pale skin, red hair. And keep in mind, this is Afghanistan. And this thing was, it was wearing some kind of crude foot wrap, some kind of canvas. And according to the story he was told by some Marines who were standing around the body, this thing had killed several soldiers. The soldiers were looking for the Taliban, and they found at the mouth of a cave in the Bagram Mountains, they found that there was a village nearby, and they were putting offerings at the mouth of this cave, food and other things, and so the U.S. soldiers thought they're aiding and abetting the Taliban, and so they went into the cave, but it wasn't the Taliban. It was a 10 to 12 foot tall monstrous being that apparently killed some of them, or at least one of them, before they sent another team in and took it out. Or we get conflicting information, but we did get a corroborating story. Actually, a fellow researcher, L.A. Marsuli, came out with a film recently in which another story, very similar to the Bagram giant, they call it the Kandahar giant, very similar situation where the giant was in a cave, emerged from the cave, skewered one of the soldiers, was flown out on a helicopter. So these things are still alive, and these are not the only stories that we get of living giants. In fact, Steve and I are right now chasing down some leads on the other side of the Earth. We won't disclose the location yet, but it's possibly going to be the location for our next film, where we're getting reports of live giants all the time from natives, and there's still tribes of giants living in the deep forests and in the jungles of the earth. And the people say, well, where are they? Where do they go? Well, listen, you have to keep in mind that the surface of the earth is extremely large. Just the dry land. Just talking about the dry land is extremely large. Of the area of the surface of the earth that is inhabitable by human beings, that area only constitutes something like 50% of the actual area of the earth. The rest of it is in uninhabitable forests and mountain peaks and extremely arid deserts. You've got the deep Amazon. You've got the jungles of places like Borneo and Papua New Guinea. You've got the Siberia, the immense wilderness of Siberia, where there are very few human beings. There's a lot of the surface of this planet where there's a lot of area on the surface of the earth where humans simply do not go. But even discounting the uninhabitable area on the earth, we need to talk about what's below the earth if you really want to have an understanding of where these things are coming from. That's how they're accessing the underground world, the underworld, literally the underworld. These giants are accessing these ancient tunnels. There's all kinds of legends around the earth about ancient cities and civilizations that are under the ground. And in fact, in our second film, The Unholy Sea, a world-renowned explorer, Anselm P. Ram, the Spanish explorer, proved the existence of what's known as the Chincana in the Andes Mountains, which was a fabled underground world, which historians and archaeologists have designated as myth. It's just myth. It's legend. It's a wives' tale. No, it's not. It's real, and it's been proven to be real. So this stuff is extremely, it's verifiable, and it's extremely intense stuff. It's top secret, and that's where many of these giants are emerging from. Is from the underworld, and they're associated with the cave systems and so forth. And I apologize for that very long-winded answer.
No, not at all, man. Not at all. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it does lead to the fact of like, well, where are they getting nutrients from? But you definitely plucked our heartstrings with the Andre the Giant drop because as wrestlers that always goes back to us. But the Smithsonian and their push for Darwinism and what we call kayfabing the masses here and keeping us in the dark. It just seems like for what purpose at this time? And also, I wanted you to maybe touch on something we were joking about earlier because we did a Mandela Effect episode, and we all remember it as the Smithsonian Institute, and now it's the Smithsonian Institution.
Well, that's interesting. It is the Smithsonian Institution. There's a difference between institution and institute, and as far as I can remember, it's been the Smithsonian Institution. Okay. I think there's a lot of articles online and videos in which it's referred to as the Smithsonian Institute, but I think that was just an error because as far as I can remember, it's always been called the Smithsonian Institution, but because it is an institution rather than an institute. However, in terms of why the Smithsonian Institution would continue the false narrative of America, let's just say American history, without even going as far back as Darwinian evolution. Well, they have a lot invested into that narrative. They sincerely believed it when they concocted it. You got to remember when the Smithsonian Institution began. This is when Darwinism was just beginning to pick up steam all over the world in terms of in the intellectual communities, and Darwinism was the most viable alternative to the Christian narrative, to the biblical narrative. And secular humanism was just getting going at that time, and the universities were looking for an alternative explanation. Darwinism gave them a convenient explanation, and they ran with it. They not only did they run with it, they absolutely invested their credibility into the Darwinian paradigm. Now, that became a problem when they started digging into the mounds in America and when they started doing a lot of the excavations all over America.
Ohio and Michigan area, right?
All over America from coast to coast. Okay. On the eastern seaboard, mainly in the mounds. But you can go to California, the Catalina Islands, and all kinds of finds in California of giants. Same deal, red-haired giant, 6 fingers in many cases, double rows of teeth. Now, when we say double rows of teeth, sometimes double rows of teeth has 2 meanings. Sometimes double rows of teeth can mean that they had strange, that, for example, they had all molars. So they sometimes would refer to that as double rows of teeth. But also, there are actually entities on Earth, not only in the United States, but all over the Earth, with 2 sets of teeth, one in front of the other. And that we find that common in not only the myths and legends, but in some of the testimonies coming from places like Sardinia. So we're dealing with a ubiquitous race of non-human giants, human hybrid giants, I think is a more accurate way to describe it. But the Smithsonian was confronted with a problem early on, and that is that they wanted to be able to explain the existence of the Native Americans, especially John Wesley Powell, who's one of the favorite sons of the Smithsonian Institution, one of the most famous directors of the Smithsonian Institution. John Wesley Powell wanted to prove that and he had a vested interest in proving that the Native Americans had in and of themselves, they came from a highly advanced culture, that they were descended from a great culture, and that they were the great mound builders, and that the Native Americans, the northern Native Americans, had some kind of a culture akin to the Inca, the Maya, something like that. But his problem was he kept discovering these skeletal remains of these entities that were wearing copper armor in some cases, that were discovered alongside of artifacts that could not have originated with any Native American tribe, because the technology to create some of these things was simply unknown to the Native Americans. Eventually, John Wesley Powell had to admit that there was indeed a race of non-indigenous giants that were inhabiting the United States. And when we say giants, we're talking anywhere from 7 foot tall all the way to 15 plus. Wow. So it's not just, as I said, it's not a standard size. And there are different kinds of giants being discovered. As I mentioned before, there are entities with horns, double rows of teeth, 6 fingers. In some cases, these guys had red hair. In some cases, they had blonde hair. In some cases, they looked like the Native Americans, but they were 9 feet tall. Obviously, there was more than just Native Americans inhabiting America, and this was a stone cold fact that John Wesley Powell had to come to terms with. And so, in his letters to the Smithsonian, the researcher Tom Horn, who's in our film, discovered some documents. He and his team discovered some documents in which John Wesley Powell, is admitting the existence of giants, but he didn't want to deal with them until he could determine from whence they had come. In other words, where did they migrate from? How did they get to the United States? Because John Wesley Powell was an isolationist, and that was the official policy of the Smithsonian Institution. So you can imagine a institution that's trying to become world-renowned, that wants to gain credibility. They've just begun. They've got a bunch of money, and they're trying to gain credibility. The last thing that the institution needs is to start some controversy about giants. They want to toe the line. They want to lead the world, at least in terms of American history, and promote the Darwinian narrative and ascend the ladder, of the credited. Of the prestigious universities in the earth. The last thing they needed was some controversy about biblical giants. That's one very practical reason why they chose to confiscate the evidence and sequester it in their vaults. And it is there to this day. Much of those bones are still there to this day. By the way, we were contacted by an individual who works or is recently retired from the Smithsonian Institution, who's been in the vaults, who absolutely confirmed to us that without question, the things that we're talking about are present in the vaults, and that they've been concealed there, and that some people within the institution are ready to have an intellectual and philosophical, is the way he put it, conversation concerning those artifacts.
Wow.
That's awesome. Man. Boy, they buried their feature, didn't they, on that one? The Giants would have definitely been the draw if they wanted funding.
That's what I'm saying, man.
That's right. Precisely.
Yeah, Stevie, I'll let you take the floor. Go ahead, man. I know you got some good stuff.
I just got 2 quick questions. One's just a general question. What's the tallest giant that has been discovered to this date, or at least been rumored to be that has walked the earth? And number 2, is there any sort of ways, much like with the government, like they try to do with UFOs with Freedom of Information Acts or anything like that, can you do any sort of request? I'm sure you have already, but is there any other steps to can be taken to at least make an attempt to access these archives?
Well, per your first question, it's hard to know what accounts are real, what accounts are credible. There's all kinds of accounts that come to us from the Romans and the Greeks. And these are in a historical context, by the way. Accounts that come to us from the Inca and from the conquistadors and the chroniclers who accompanied the conquistadors. If we are to believe their accounts, there's been multiple giants discovered all over the earth in excess of 20 feet, 30 feet.
Wow.
Multiple giants. I mean, so we're talking about, like cartoonishly large giants. The vast majority of giants that I would consider credible finds or evidence that seem to me to have some legitimacy are between 8 and 12 feet. I would say that is the majority of what I've seen in terms of the body of evidence for giants, although there are some many, many credible finds which exceed 15 feet. But the vast majority of them seem to be within 8 and 12 feet, somewhere in that range. I'm sorry, I forgot your second question.
I was just saying, like, much like the UFO people and other people that have tried to get information declassified from the government through the Freedom of Information Act, is there any sort of steps that obviously I'm sure you've probably taken, but is there any more steps that could be taken to at least access these archives or try to attempt to access them?
You know, the truth is that there's a very large UFO community. There's a very large community of ufologists, and they're very organized. They actually have they can lobby the government and have lobbied the government. As you know, they've had hearings in Congress. So there are people from all walks of life. I mean, there are university professors and ex-government officials, military personnel, across the spectrum of society. You have ufologists that have banded together to file Freedom of Information Acts, to lobby the government, and so forth. As it pertains to giants, that kind of organization does not exist. And I'll tell you why. There are many individuals across the earth who are eager to expose the UFO phenomenon, the UFO cover-up, and we are among them. Myself and Steve Quayle are there with them. I would consider myself a ufologist, and I'm very interested in the topic. Steve Quayle, Steve's had some of the most amazing sources on the topic of ufology and everything, all things relating to aliens and abductions and so forth. However, that kind of organization does not exist when we talk about the existence of giants, simply because many of those ufologists are not at all interested in supporting the biblical narrative, which the existence of giants does in fact support, at least to some degree. So they veer away from that. A lot of the people that are involved in the organizations, MUFON and so forth, subscribe to the ancient astronaut theory, not so much to the biblical narrative. So the giants don't fit. The giants are sort of a wild card when you're talking about ancient aliens, when you're talking about abductions, when you're talking about flying saucers and Vimanas in the distant past. Suddenly you have this wild card of these 10 to 12 foot tall, 10 to 15 foot tall beings that you have to give an account for. Where did they come from? How do they fit in? And so there isn't as much enthusiasm. So the answer is that no, we haven't filed any Freedom of Information type requests from the government, because the government cannot at this time with a straight face deny that UFOs exist. And in fact, they don't really do that anymore. But they can deny the existence of giants, because there simply hasn't been the kind of coverage for giants. So at this point in time, the government would pretty much just laugh at us if we tried to push this narrative of giants into the public arena without the kind of organization, without the kind of backing. Now, the best way we can force the issue is if we can verify bones. If we can DNA test, document bones, and we're actually trying to one-up bones. We're actually trying to find live giants and film them. And obviously that would break open the can, and the government and the universities and the Smithsonian would then have to deal with the issue. They wouldn't be able to laugh at it anymore at that point.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually, real quick, that they will it sounds like they're cherry picking stuff out of the Bible that supports the existence of extraterrestrials or visitors from outside of our planet. Within the Bible, they talk a little bit and touch on that, but they'll ignore the parts that I didn't. I was raised Roman Catholic myself and studied the Bible for many years. I didn't even realize that Moses had talked about giants walking among men in the Bible. It's pretty amazing and eye-opening.
It is, and not only does Moses talk about the giants, and of course the famous Moses is attributed with the writing of the book of Genesis, and in the book of Genesis chapter 6 talks about the sons of God, the Benai Ha Elohim, that descended from heaven, which are called in other ancient extra-biblical texts the Watchers. By the way, this narrative is retold in every major ancient civilization on the planet retells this story in some way, shape, or form. The gods descending from heaven, taking wives among the children of men, copulating with these women, and progenerating as a result a hybrid race of giants, the demigods of old. And the Bible certainly retells this narrative, and so you have this. You have the Bible, you have the extra biblical text supporting the biblical narrative. And then you have all of the myths and legends from the ancient world also supporting that narrative. And that's why we're not just dealing with tall individuals. We're not just dealing with NBA players. What we're dealing with is a non-human sentient race of entities whose fathers, in the original line, the original stock of these things, their fathers were non-human watchers. You can call them watchers. You can call them fallen angels. These were non-human beings that were not like us, that fathered these entities. So these things are not just corporeal. They're not just physical. They have supernatural capabilities. And that's why, you talk about just the strength of their size. Well, you also have to deal with, in many cases, the capacity of their cranial capacity in some cases, because we're dealing with giants with elongated skulls. We're dealing with all kinds of different physiological variances. But these things were supernatural entities. They weren't just corporeal. So it's a very, very, very complex situation.
Tim, I have a question for you now. I was making jokes with these guys earlier. I'm 6'9", and Ben keeps making jokes. I'm a giant and everything else.
You are a giant.
The thought. Now, I see people who are taller than me, 7 foot tall and stuff, and they're usually lanky and tall, and they look like they're going to break. So the thought of something 8 feet tall, 10 feet tall, but being proportioned to that size is I'm floored. Have you ever, in your research while you're out there on the field, have you ever been somewhere and been like, shit, I shouldn't be here? Or, you know what I mean? Like, do you feel like you were somewhere, especially after hearing like a SEAL team getting wiped out? Like, are you just like, what am I doing?
Do you want to know where I experienced those feelings? Was in the Curia of the Jesuits, the Jesuit headquarters in Rome. When I walked into the Jesuit headquarters, I definitely had that feeling in my gut. This is dangerous. I probably should not be lingering here very long. We were not invited. We just walked in with our cameras because the guy we were with, he's in our second film, the Unholy C. Leo Zagami, was at one time a union leader there. For the police, and he knew one of the guys running security that day in the Jesuit Curia, the Jesuit headquarters in Vatican City. He recognized Leo, and he said, I'll give you 15 minutes or whatever. Come in with your camera. So, and we did have some Jesuit priests walk in on us and stand there and mean mug us as we were recording. So yes, that was definitely probably the most nerve-wracking instance that I've experienced filming so far. But I'll tell you what, we've got some plans here lined up for this year where I'm going to be going into some places that it's probably going to be pretty touch and go to some of these areas that I'm going to be venturing into this year. But so far, we haven't encountered anything we haven't been able to deal with. So, but yeah, I mean, when you're this kind of information, when you're talking about what I referenced earlier, core reality, when you talk about the aliens and ancient technology and giants and other things, by the way, other creatures and entities, this isn't fanciful. This is top secret stuff. This is the kind of stuff that people have lost their lives researching. And we take it very seriously. And both Steve and I have had some situations in our lives that have reinforced the notion that this isn't a game. This is very serious research, and we need to be careful and we are careful, and we do take the necessary precautions. So, this isn't just chasing butterflies with nets.
No, you got the Indiana Jones jacket. You just need the bullwhip now because they're taking all the stuff. They're locking
I might need a little more than a bullwhip if I ever did it.
This
And
is
by
what
the
I'm
way,
saying.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, you said earlier. You said you're like, I want to find live giants, and now in my mind, I've always said I'd love to encounter an alien. Okay, just because I don't find them threatening at all. But like just hearing that, and when you said you're like, our goal is to find live giants, and I'm like, this is the same dude. He just said they just killed SEAL Team 6 guys, right. And like, what are you gonna like? That's to me, because like to me, honestly, right now, this is everything you've said. It's all going through my mind, and I'm processing this, and it's just exploding my brain. And if you find live giants, you're going to be out in the field, something to that effect. Short of like a government installation where you see one frozen, or being kept alive, you're out in the field, you're in a cave, you're wherever you're going to go across the globe, and here you are, you're somewhere where you think there could be a giant in this cave. There could be a giant in these catacombs. These catacombs are 12 feet tall, 15 feet tall. There's something in there. Like, to me, this is a real threat, right? So like, what is your plan?
Let me rephrase that statement. I would love to be 500 yards away with a powerful lens on my camera, filming a giant. I'm not sure that I want to encounter a giant in a cave, but we're very careful, and we don't just go exploring in areas where we think we might run into trouble haphazardly. We do our homework, we do our due diligence. We get our leads, and we make sure that we know what we're going into. We know what we're getting into. So, and what we're doing right now is we're working with natives from certain areas of the earth that are giving us information, and that will very possibly be some guides for a future expedition. So, as I said, we're being very careful. But I lived in the Amazon for 10 years, and I've been deep in the Amazon, and there's some crazy stuff that happens in the Amazon, that goes on in the deep Amazon, and I've experienced some of it myself, and and this was before, by the way, before I was researching any of this, before I was working with Steve Quayle, and that's why we call our series True Legends. People just would not believe what's actually walking around, both on the surface of the earth and below it. It is literally the stuff of nightmares.
I think, the most dangerous is, and forgive me because I forgot the gentleman's name, was in the documentary before we wrap this up and take it home. He was talking about the shot for shot in Iraq, that, the day one when troops were on the ground, they went to the museum in Baghdad, I believe it was, and were looking through these huge crates at old relics, and then they finally found something that they were looking for, it seemed, and that's what they took out of there. Kind of hearsay what it was, but that gentleman's house burned to the ground as well in some suspicious circumstances. So definitely want you to not just worry about fee fi fo fum and having to take off and run, but afterwards, please make sure you have some steps of insurance policies. If something did happen, you that this information is going to be protected as well. Not that we want any harm to befall you, man, but we'll definitely start to take it home here. I want to say thank you for all the time you've given us. This information is just, peels your hair back pretty much. And your production value on this is so high level, more than we ever expected it was going to be. So bravo again from me on that. And why don't you let people know where they can find this and how they can be in contact and really start to support this search for the giants and the truth of this information.
You can see our films. We have 3. We have episode 1, 2, and 3 out. You can see it get access to a DVD, Blu-ray, or the streaming version of our films on at TrueLegendsTheSeries.com. TrueLegendsTheSeries.com. And yeah, I mean, we deal with giants, but we also pack these episodes are packed with all kinds of stuff. We talk about all kinds of things: aliens, the Vatican and the cover-up of aliens, underground tunnels and the Shinkana. We deal with all kinds of things, and that's why the series is called True Legends. We basically go out there, we research these legends, we follow leads, and we see if we can find evidence for a lot of these myths and legends, and that come from the ancient world. Many of them, and they're still propagated to this day. So, but hey, this was fantastic. I thank you guys for having me on the show, and I'm always up for these kind of conversations. So
we're semi-speechless, man.
I was gonna say, seriously, have you ever heard me ever shut up?
Yeah, no, I've never heard some crack jokes or anything like that.
I think the analogy for us is this is sort of like right up there with how 9/11 opened my eyes, because I didn't know anything about this until I watched this documentary. Ben and Sal had talked about it just a little bit, but this afternoon, and I'm glad I watched it right before the show, this afternoon was really my first taste of any of this material. I watched it this afternoon, and it blew my mind. I mean, we were talking through Facebook message during the show, so we didn't step over each other, and I was just like, I have no words for this information. It's crazy. I believe it, but it's just amazing.
And you have a doctorate level grasp of it, so we definitely feel like babes in the woods here a little bit compared to what we even knew is just some.
Well, I commend you guys. I commend you guys for dealing with this topic, for having the guts to talk about it, and thank you for watching my film and for watching our film. That's exactly the kind of reaction we were hoping is to get out of people, is to blow their minds, because and we're not exaggerating. I mean, we go out, we do the research, we talk to the people. These are real people we're interviewing who literally dug up the bones of giants 9 and 10 feet tall beneath the Catholic Church in Santa Anastasia and in other places in Sardinia. And by the way, those bones came out of the ground and went into the church and then disappeared overnight.
Well, if you find a live one out there and you can convince them to get into pro wrestling, I know a guy who can get them booked. So.
I'm not sure that they would agree.
Yeah, the first payday, everybody dies in the locker room.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the only way you could get those guys to agree was if they could eat the loser.
I got a couple names for that list. But Timothy Albariño, director of Holocaust of the Giants, I want to say thanks again so much, man. This is going to be
amazing film.
Such great feedback, and everyone, get over there, Gen 6, get on Vimeo or get the Blu-ray, because I'm going to have to watch this again, just after this conversation. I can't wait to watch that whole thing again. It's been wonderful, and I think this is going to be our best episode ever. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and anytime.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, seriously.
Yeah, what the fuck, man?
Here we go. Ready? I was sitting here and I had a whole list of smart-ass things to say.
Yeah, no, dude, that was a doctorate level class.
I'm like, oh my god.
Papadon tried to call in. I think it cut off the video halfway through. Not blaming him for it. He was very anxious to get in here and be a part of the conversation. I know he's going to want to know more about that. That was.
He's going to want to punch himself in the nuts after missing that.
I can do that for him when I see him in Philly. I meant what I said to him, though.
Said Greeks, though, and when they go.
Oh, yeah. I was like, here we go, man. But I 100% sincere when I said that this is serious, like 9/11 level type of boom, on mind-blowing stuff. And yeah, there's nothing they put out there that was sensationalized to me in any way watching this documentary.
No.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I first watched that History Channel Giants crap, and that was a while back, and it was just like, okay. But this was completely different. This was something that I was like, wow. Like, again, just had no words.
And we only covered maybe a third of kind of where the trip that they go on inside that. I'm glad we didn't, jump around, because the Iraq stuff is really great in there, and the Giant of Kandahar that he talked about earlier isn't really in that. And that's kind of what brought me to them, noticing their videos early on, and that Steve Quayle was kind of hot at the History Channel stuff. And that's why he started Gen 6 Productions. And now, like I said, that stuff's blowing him out of the water. So guys, I mean, if you're enjoying this podcast, you really need to go over, support these guys, spend, I think it's $14.99 on Vimeo. I'm not sure what the DVD costs, but this is going to peel your heads back. You know how Hacker and Stevie and Big Sal can talk some shit, but really we're all befuddled and speechless. So if that isn't a ringing endorsement to shut our big mouths, then I don't know what is, because
we should have asked them if they wanted 3 wrestlers to go on the next expedition. That would be a cool little addition.
God.
I would go.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest. Like I'm all joking aside, I probably would shit my pants. Yeah. Just a thought. I sent you guys that message because I was sitting here and I'm getting my hair on the back of my head standing up, and I'm going, Jesus, holy shit! Imagine something 15 feet tall. That was in proportion, not El Gigante size. It looks like he's going to trip
Bradley
over
from the Sixers or something.
Yeah, I'm not talking about, hey, you're 7.5 feet tall and you weigh 180 pounds. I'm talking about like when he's dropping 1,000-pound shit, 12 foot tall, 1,000 pounds. Like, it's just, to me, it's scary as shit.
It's like really it's the Incredible Hulk, the Eric Bana one, where there was just like CG. It's not CGI though. The size of the giant.
You can whip a tank around and stuff right by the barrel.
Oh man.
But I was also thinking when he was talking about the ones with, I've seen the skulls with the Dracula fangs, but I don't think I've seen the ones with the horns. I'm just thinking Darth Maul and his brother. Like, can you imagine a 15-foot Darth Maul sail? That was my head. Stevie got hot when he buried Star Trek. I could see Stevie like cringing.
Actually, that's just in your mind. That's more predictive programming. So Star Trek is actually for real. It's just backwards. It's from the 1500s, not the 2500s.
Right. Right. I was thinking about the evolutionary chart. It really, instead of from chimpanzees going up to man, it could almost be the opposite.
We're the chimps. Maybe
we're
the chimps.
At the other end, right? The de-evolution.
There is like, just again, and the funny part is in all the role playing games, tabletop role playing games I play and stuff like that. This is storyline, and like they base books on this. And it's always kind of like, oh, that always blows the players' minds. That you're like, wait a minute, we're the experiment, that sort of thing. And to hear it come out and like, and I just for real, like just to be told, hey, look, here's the proof we have. Here are the facts we have. Not, hey, theorists say, nope, it had nothing to do with that. It was, here's what it is. And it's like, oh, shit.
Yeah, there's none of that. You watch Ancient Alien Theory. Ancient Alien Theory say yes. It doesn't matter.
Theorists think it could be.
Your grandma crapped a UFO. Ancient Alien Theorists say yes. Right? So, no, there's none of that in here. It is, if you heard him speak, obviously, today, you know how impassioned it is, and took us around a trip around the world to talk megalithic and even biblical historical facts. This guy has got it wired tight, and this is what the whole documentary is backed up with: incredible visuals, drone photography. They're on the site in Sardinia talking to people who are, at the last phase of their life, who dug these up and helped the church kayfabe them and keep those establishments in power for, hundreds of years to keep this history pushed down. So I got to say, it's Smithsonian Institute. If you look it up.
Yeah, I got to stay in with you on that one. The $14.99 I recommend in this day of instant gratification. Go to the Vimeo thing, because I got it on my iPad Pro. It looks incredible. You downloaded it as well on the computer, Ben, and yeah, that way you get to download it and keep it. It's a high quality version, and it will make you not ever want to watch the History Channel or the travel. Like, I'm a big Ghost Adventures, Destination Truth when that was on and all that.
Right.
There's actually a payoff in this. It's not just like, well, we sort of found the ghost, and tune in next time when we sort of find the ghost again. It's every bit of it is fact, and I would have a notepad if I knew better next time I watch it, write it down so you can look it up to hook it up, right? Or look it up to get the hook up. Well, how do you say it? I love that.
I get the look up to get the hook up on that Big Papa Pump. Holler if you hear me.
By far, that was the best episode. That was the best conspiracy show I've ever been a part of. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was like sitting in a master's class in college, man, and having it felt like that Indiana Jones almost all the way through, because in there's the guy says his house burns down and he lost his laptop with all the pictures from Iraq and whatnot. And all I'm thinking about is the end of an Indiana Jones when they're locking stuff away in the warehouse and like they do that, they pulls out, and meanwhile this guy's got the jacket on and he's about to go to the site in the Amazon again or wherever they're going in the back country of the world to go actually look for this stuff to bring high content.
Ben, I gotta I'm sorry. When you said to the guy, you're like, I hope you have your shit backed up. And I'm going, oh shit, this guy could be killed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, like it was a whole other there was a whole other layer of the onion that just got peeled back for me. And I went, oh man, oh shit.
Well, they do kind of allude to that. I don't know if you got through in there. So the guy, like, he's talking about, day one in Iraq when we invaded the second time. They go right to the Baghdad Museum. They know right where they're going in the basement. They're looking through these big boxes where all of these huge sarcophaguses are, and they finally get to the ones in the back. And there was a photographer with them that was just taking pictures every second, just shutter, click, 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 like every step. And they can look in these ones, and then they look in the ones in the back corner, because Saddam was a nut for this stuff, right? He thought he was the second coming, and he was rebuilding all these temples at where the Stargate supposedly was. And they don't have pictures of what was in there, but they instantly take them out to be loaded on another C-130 or what have you. And then that guy's house burns to the ground one night. Just, no reason that like fire marshals give. I'm sure it could be coincidence, but if this guy's got the kayfabe top secret pictures and somebody stooges that, oh, this guy might have them, what does it mean for them to burn to the ground? So let's say he does make it all the way to the end of the world and finds the giants he's looking for and gets actual visual proof. It's the fact that he's going to come back and stooge it off is almost more dangerous than having to get away from a giant, really.
Well, I'm sitting here and I'm legit, like I told you, I'm worrying about giants. And then when you said that, I'm like, oh man, I hope this dude's all right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to see more from this guy.
Yeah, I'm not going. My cardio sucks. I'd be the first one to fall down and get killed by the giant. There's no way.
Well, I'd make Stevie carry me. That would be his cardio.
He could do it. He's on that Stevie Richards fitness. I heard it's a good program.
Yeah, there's got to be a gym at the base in that church at the bottom of the mound. That's my only requirement. Yeah, I'm worried about, once again, we always say it. What if this news does come out, just like the Secure Team 10 you talked about in the beginning, Ben, and all these other things, and it just kind of just glosses over. What if it just comes out, hey, we got a picture of a giant, and then, well, Trump spelled coffee wrong, so let's concentrate on that.
Yeah. I think, business would pick up for WWE, ratings would be back up, and the NBA would be watchable again. Like, they'd have to raise the baskets up to 20 feet like Rock and Jock used to be. So there's a lot of possibilities of how
Dan Cortez gets his heat back.
That's right. He comes back. Daisy Fuentes, our careers relaunched. Just sound like that pop culture one. But, this is just, it's too much, guys. I mean, Hamin gets hardcore, and this is the happy hour, but right now this is going to be the quiet hour because we got taken to school by a master right here, and I'm happy to do it. So I'm going to try and look for more guests like this to come on. We're always going to have our fun, but I know people were pumped for this episode, so please give us your feedback, and please give Gen6 Productions all the support. And you have to see this, and I'm going to go back and watch episodes 1 and 2 as well. I think he sent me the kayfabe link on the other one. I'll try and get that as well, but I'm going to buy episode 1 just because I owe them after that, right? You guys, we got to get there.
I definitely
for sure.
want to support them because they've put a ton of money in their production, and everything that they've done is, I can't get over how top notch. And that dude, I'm sort of glad we got him on because he hosted the documentary technically and narrated it, and I really do like the way he presented. So I think it turned out even better to have him on.
I do too. Steve Quayle's kind of the name because of Ancient Aliens, where he's had stuff like that, so he's just a little more known. But Tim Albariño, you guys know
Legit,
the name
man, that was
because
just legit.
he's the next Indiana Jones legit. He's got the jacket. Somebody sent him the bullwhip and the hat, and he's going to be on the next cargo plane fighting the Germans and looking for giants, you guys.
He's got probably a ton of rats too, I bet.
Imagine the giant rats he finds.
Oh yeah.
He likes the redheads. So, Jesus, I don't even feel like plugging anything really after this. You can get ProWrestlingTees.com/BenHamin shirts in 4X. So if you're a giant out there who needs one of those, by all means do it. But I don't think we're going up to 15-footer sizes. Gonna have a tough time in Chicago making that one. But
now you're just fat shaming them.
Well, somebody had to. Yeah, man.
Oh, you know what? Papa Don is going to be so upset he missed this.
Dude, he's hot right now.
He did cut the show in half when he called in and I answered, so he kind of fucked everything up. So I'll have to do.
You did answer because I saved him.
Show and I'll just have to do a little preview thing where I say, hey, this is the episode. Listen to the whole thing on like we're teasing them, but we really just fucked everything up. Thanks, Papa Don.
Yeah, the second half of the show is where you see what happens.
Yeah, I've done run-ins like that where I fucked up the whole match. What are you gonna do? So, all right, yeah. Hey, Big Sal, good to have you back on, man.
Thank you guys for having me back.
I hope you can come on every Wednesday. I know your schedule is busy, but hopefully this was enough to.
This is going to be awesome. I'm going to make my wife watch the documentary because I want to watch it again.
Awesome.
And I'm going to make her watch it. She's going to be like, "What are you making me watch?"
Yeah, dude, and I can't wait to see what these guys find next. And hey, if you're out there and you're in Michigan or California or Ohio, where a lot of these giant mounds were, and this stuff, you're one of these adventurers who's just doing it on their own weekend warrior style. You might be the guy or gal who unearths this and brings.
Send pictures in, man. If you hit one of those mounds, send them in.
Yeah, do what's right here. Don't call Smithsonian and blow the lid off this stuff. You know how media works and how you can get enough attention right away. Set it all up and let's help these guys out and be the first, because you never know. It could be some lucky person out there who isn't at a doctorate level like him. But usually these in the documentary, it's these old school farmers. It could be anybody like that, and I'm sure there's plenty of those type of stories floating around Americana too. If you know any, share them with us. At Ben_Hamin on Twitter, at BWO Stevie, at Greek God Papadon, and send up a smoke signal for Sal, and I'll make sure he gets the message.
Ruby. Also, you know what? This is what I want to do. This is my life goal.
Go ahead.
I want to hang out with Tim Albariño, get him fucking drunk, and have him tell me about the shit he saw on the Amazon.
Yeah.
That's what I want to know. Because did you notice he would tease it, but he ain't telling anything about it.
No.
I want to know what the fuck he saw. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to know.
Well, I think that's a good life goal, Sal, and I want to
crawl around in Tim Albariño's brain.
Yeah, I would go on that one. Maybe not the giant.
He actually booked his Amazon segment better than most of the wrestling shows do. He made us want the payoff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, all right, anything else you guys want to add, man, before we take it home here?
I love you guys.
I love you too. We missed you, man. We missed you. Please make it more often, because the USB buzz is gone, so it was your USB port.
It was my left side.
Yeah.
I just switched ports.
Yeah, it sounds perfect now. It sounds better than my $300 microphones. Isn't that shitty?
Yeah, well, the tech bug strikes. What are you going to do, guys? Yeah. But hey, this is HAMIN'S Hardcore Happy Hour, founded on HackerHamin.podbean.com or searched on iTunes, HackerHamin. Always go over, support Stevie Richards at Stevie Richards, all his tech blogs and what he's got going on there with StevieRichardsFitness.com, Patreon, and geez, we might have to start charging if the episodes are this good, goddammit. So hear me now, infidels. Sleep tightly if you can, because fee, fi, fo, fum, Hamin will crush the blood of the infidels. YOLO! Ha 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 ha.